Sputnik was a wake-up call for the US. China's hypersonic missile is a trickier challenge. That was how NBC Radio introduced the signal from the first satellite in space on October 4, 1957. The phrase Sputnik moment was coined to mark the moment. It signified shock at the loss of a presumed superiority, a rival's technological leap that might wreck the nuclear balance of power. The then-President Dwight D. Eisenhower professed to be worried, not one iota, about Sputnik, but public and political reaction in the US was less sanguine. Russian science whipped American science, screamed the Boston Globe. Last week, the chairman of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, recalled the Sputnik moment when he spoke about China's test of one or more hypersonic missiles this summer. What we saw was a very significant event of a test of a hypersonic weapon system. And it is very concerning, Milley said. I don't know if it's quite a Sputnik moment, but I think it's very close to that. In national security terms, surprises and the inability to assess a threat are what keep the top brass awake at night. Sputnik briefly ticked both boxes. China's rapid development of hypersonic technology may be of a different order.
In the years after Sputnik, the US quickly overtook the Soviet Union in satellite and space technology. NASA was created in 1958. By 1960, the US had 3 times as many satellites orbiting the Earth as did the USSR. Parity was restored, despite some mishaps along the way. The first US response to Sputnik blew up on launch. The test of a hypersonic vehicle in October failed. So little is known about the Chinese program, it's almost impossible to assess whether a larger gap has opened up. Intelligence officials told the Senate Intelligence Committee in private briefings that the Chinese test marked a substantial advance in China's ability to launch a strategic first strike against the United States, according to people familiar with the briefings. The technology itself isn't new. The US, China, Russia, and other countries have been working on it for decades. Russia is developing a range of hypersonic weapons that President Vladimir Putin has boasted are invincible. If one power were to take a decisive lead in weaponizing hypersonic technology, that would be destabilizing. Agility at low altitude. A Iran report in 2017 noted that even defenders with capable terrestrial and space sensors will have only a few minutes to know these missiles are inbound. If an intercontinental ballistic missile were fired at a US target, roughly 25 minutes would elapse between detection and impact. Some analysts calculate that if a hypersonic weapon were used, that delay would be just 6 minutes. To protect the continental US from a hypersonic arsenal, an unaffordable number of high-altitude defenses would be needed. And that assumes much better defenses than those currently deployed. Additionally, US anti-missile systems are focused on the northern hemisphere. A highly maneuverable hypersonic missile in low orbit might be routed over the South Pole. Ivan Ulrich, a former vice president of the Federation of American Scientists, contends that hypersonic weapons will add some new military capabilities but will not revolutionize warfare. But the RAND report, written in 2017, estimated that there was at most a decade before hypersonic missiles become militarily significant. Sputnik soul-searching. The original Sputnik moment sparked a good deal of soul-searching in the US. Critics felt the US had been slow to recognize and respond to the Soviets' ambition to be the first into space. Both Lyndon Johnson and John F. Kennedy, then US senators, used the Sputnik moment to criticize American unpreparedness. Johnson famously warned that the Soviet Union would be able to bombard America with nuclear warheads like kids throwing stones from an overpass. Similarly, today some critics say the US has been sluggish in recognizing the threat. The Pentagon failed to be effective in articulating the need for, and then managing the development of, hypersonic weapons, says Andrew Senesak, from the National Defense Industrial Association. Sputnik spurred spending on science education. The National Defense Education Act was passed in 1958. Whether the rapid accumulation of Chinese capabilities will inspire similar investment in the US is yet to be seen. Today, hypersonic technology is being developed in Australia and Europe for commercial, peaceful applications. But much of the technology could have a military value. Arms control and defense. The Sputnik moment was important in 2 other ways. Satellites became an important part of the early warning systems that allowed humanity to live with mutually assured destruction. Missile defenses have a checkered history. James Acton at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace says the US should offer to negotiate new limits on missile defenses, to which it would only agree if China and Russia offered very significant concessions in return. A major study by the RAND Corporation came to the same conclusion. The unavoidable requirement is for the United States, Russia, and China to agree on a non-proliferation policy. The authors said. There is one important caveat. In the decade after Sputnik, the US and Soviet Union developed channels of communication to try to ensure conflict would not begin through miscalculation. Today, there are few such channels with China, which is problematic when so many platforms can carry either conventional or nuclear warheads. Money and knowledge. One unsurprising similarity with the Sputnik moment is how such watersheds spur calls for lots of spending. Fareed Zakaria, writing in the Washington Post, says raising fears about a huge and tech-savvy enemy is a surefire way to guarantee vast new budgets that can be spent countering the enemy's every move, real or imagined. Real or imagined is part of the problem when it comes to hypersonic weapons. To borrow the phrase of former U.S. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, there are things we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns, the ones we don't know. And, as he later said, they're the ones that get you.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.